Here we go.
Welcome to the May meeting of the Reston Planning and Zoning Committee. I guess for our first application will be Isaac Newton Square. Andrew Painter, are you ready to roll?
Well, thank you very much, Madam Vice Chair. Good evening,
Oh.
everyone. Andrew Painter with Walsh Colucci. I am ready to roll.
So take it away, and just Tammy's fine. That madam stuff is a little nerve-wracking. Thank you.
Madam Chair, Madam Chairman, Madam. Yeah, okay, got it. All right. Well, good evening, everyone. We are here tonight for a recommendation vote from the committee on the Isaac Newton Square blocks W2, N1, and N3. We had materials that were submitted in advance of last month's meeting, and then some supplemental materials that were sent out last week. We wanted to make sure you all had the latest. And then what I would like to do is just reacclimate everyone in sort of a truncated fashion, since we talked about it extensively last time. But I would like to address the parking issue because that came up last time. And then would like to walk through some of the most recent comments that we received from county staff last week and bring you up to speed as to where that's going. And then lastly, we'll turn it over to Will, our landscape designer, to walk through the latest as far as the landscaping goes. And I think that should round up the comments that I think we received during the last meeting. So let me share my screen if I may. Let's see. Okay, hopefully everyone can see my screen, and I'm going to maximize it there. So again, this is an approximately 32-acre portion of Isaac Newton Square, about 66% of the total park. You all know exactly where it is. We've talked about it a lot, but you can see the mature willow oak frame, and you can see the Hidden Creek Golf Course to the south. There have been a number of zoning applications that have been approved since October of 2019. First, that was the rezoning, which replanned all of it for 10 pedestrian-friendly development blocks, about 2.8 million square feet of development, inclusive of approximately 2,100 dwelling units with a variety of product types. And it was supposed to be residentially intensive because, again, this is a little bit further away, even though it's in the transit station area. It's a little bit further away from the Wheelie Avenue metro station. But the idea is to use residential development to drive the demand for retail and locally serving office use closer to Metro Rail. We have engaged arborists to maintain and monitor the willow oak trees. We came before you in 2021 and in 2023 for FDPs. One was for what we call the road and infrastructure FDP that we talked about last time, and that was really getting the northernmost blocks, these 4 blocks, ready for vertical construction and setting the street lines and sort of the pad sites. And then in October of 2023 was the block 2 multi was 345 units. And so we are here to sort of round things out at the northern edge with blocks W2, N1, and N3. This is the graphic illustrative that we showed last time. This is what was approved with the 2019 approval. I know that there's the road to nowhere. Okay, we continue to say we will take it off, but I didn't want to take it away because this is what we showed in 2019, and this is reflective of that. But again, the rezoning from 2019, you can see the statistics on the right-hand side. So when we looked at coming out of the ground, we didn't want to have just one block here, another block there. We wanted to do it all cohesively and have all of the open spaces and the pedestrian connections in the first phase come out of the ground at roughly the same time. So we focused on the buildings that were in the need of the most deferred maintenance, where we could relocate tenants that wanted to stay in the park. And by and large, we located them to the south, closer to the W&OD Trail, near where the One Life Fitness is. So these are the 4 blocks that would comprise really the first phase of the development. Alongside with the approval back in 2019 were a series of publicly accessible open spaces. And so you can see the mature Willow Oak Park framework. That is the square, which gives the name to Isaac Newton Square. There is the Nature's Edge Park, and with Nature's Edge, there were a series of trails But there's some major amenities. There's a playground, there's a dog park, and a sports overlook that came with Block W2. But the playground will be delivered with blocks W2 and N1 for this project. This is these are the sort of that first phase. Again, block N2, which is the multifamily building that was approved back in 2023. And so what we're focused on now are really the townhouse blocks, W2, N1, and N3. As a reminder, and I'm going to walk through some of the statistics on this, W2 was originally planned for 60 units. What is proposed with W2 now is 61 units. And that would be 24 what we call back-to-back townhomes or side-by-side townhomes, and then 37 conventional townhomes. Block N1 was originally approved for 70 units. There is a lower unit count there down to 58 units, and that would be 38 side-by-side townhomes and 20 conventional townhomes. And Block N3, that was originally planned for either a hotel use or a small multifamily building. That's the smallest of all of the blocks. And we talked last time about the design constraints, especially the large electric vault that is in the southeastern corner of the site along Wheelie Avenue. That was originally planned for 180 units. And what we are able to fit onto that site now is 24 side-by-side units. When we were before P&Z during the pandemic in 2022, this is when Pointe was the contract purchaser at the time. We were showing stacked townhomes, and stacked townhomes. One of the things that we were having trouble with at that time was finding a way to get 2-car garages. So all the stacked townhomes had to have a 1-car garage, and then they had a pretty lengthy driveway to fit 2 spaces per unit. The beauty with the side-by-side townhomes that we talked about last time is that we can actually fit 2-car garages in each unit. And that allows approximately 40% decrease in the limits of, the limits of the building envelope. So we can free up a lot more space along Willow Oak Park, along Wheelie Avenue, and along Nature's Edge Park to the north. We talked last time also about some of the architecture, and we talked about the architectural inspiration, be it Washington Plaza or Midline or EYA Reston Station. What's on the left-hand side is the Block N2 multifamily building. Again, that was approved in 2023. That has gotten through the site plan approval, and they should be breaking ground on that, or they are breaking ground on that as we speak. And the MRP, which is the master developer, worked with the ownership to come up with architecture that would be uniform across Isaac Newton Square so that you don't have this discordant architecture. So what you see on the right-hand side is the precedent architecture for the townhomes that we are proposing and the side-by-side units. In terms of the latest staff comments, again, this is very, very recent. And so we wanted to make sure that we had all the information for you. We are in the last throes of the staff review process. And these are some of the changes that have been recently made as of today, okay? And so one of the comments was to provide easements to accommodate the ultimate shared use path along Wheelie Avenue as it goes to the north. We are improving the Wheelie Avenue trail on our frontage, and then it sort of narrows down to a concrete sidewalk. And so staff asked us to provide easements to accommodate the future ultimate shared path as that gets widened at some point in the future. So we've done that. Staff asked for a lighting plan. That has now been provided. The interior of the blocks for W2 and N1, we have parking spaces for visitor parking. Staff asked us to have wheel stops at each of those. And typically we don't have wheel stops on head-in parking. We are providing them here, and the goal is to prevent cars from encroaching onto any adjacent sidewalks. So we've done that. Staff asked us to coordinate with the forest conservation folks and the park authority staff regarding forest conservation measures at the time of site plan and pre-construction, both for the willow oak trees and then also for the Nature's Edge trees that are outside the limits of clearing and grading on our northern edge. Down at the southern edge of block W2, and I'm just going to back up here for a second, but if you can see where my cursor is, there is a trail that was shown on the graphic illustrative that goes to the south of these properties. And we are terminating the trail here. It's not a proffered trail. The trail actually doesn't even come down this far on the proffered commitment. It's just on the graphic illustrative. But what staff asked us to do is to take the trail down as far as is reasonable. And eventually there will be development on the block that is to the south, hopefully one day, where my cursor is. And so staff asked us to provide an easement for a future trail connection somewhere along this common property boundary, which we did. And then staff said at some point in time, we may want to have a trail connection to the golf course to the west. Not talking about development of the golf course or anything like that, but just at some point in time, maybe there would be a reason to connect to the west. And so we have changed our drawings to depict an easement that shows connections to the east, to the west, and to the south, so that if somebody wanted to tap in, they could. And then we also agreed to provide some seed money to just facilitate those connections, which is something that staff had asked for. Next bullet point down, next to the last, provide additional landscaping to further block the block N1 alleyway. So where my cursor is here, next to the playground, there is an alley that terminates. And staff from the very beginning was concerned about people looking down the alley. Now, I will tell you that there is a substantial topographical change of about 4 to 5 feet between where the playground is and the alley. So that naturally provides, some sort of visual separation from headlights and things like that. But we added a screening wall, and then we also added additional landscaping to address the staff comment. And then the last bullet point, having steep slope proactive measures as a condition for block N3. So again, block N3 is up here. It abuts the RA land to the north. We are not going anywhere close or grading into the area that's adjacent to the RA land, but we are going to agree to a condition that says at the time of site plan, we will have to demonstrate to staff satisfaction how the installation utilities and paths in this area will not adversely affect steep slopes outside of the limits of clearing and grading, and then to also provide appropriate protection for those measures. Before I turn it over to Will, there was a comment about parking last time. And Chris Myers, I'm going to turn to you on this as well, but I will just say, first of all, we have sufficient parking to meet the residential requirements in the block. So we are not seeking any sort of parking reduction for these 3 blocks. We have spaces that are on Isaac Newton Square West and Isaac Newton Square North and Center Street that will be for additional visitor parking spaces. Those will be field located and they will be signed and stenciled to delineate in the field to make it clear that those are for visitor parking spaces. Now, all of the streets in Isaac Newton Square are private. These 3 blocks are parked at 50% higher than the requirement under the county's code. So the county's code requirement is 1.3 spaces per unit, and we are at 2.0 spaces per unit. There is also a proffer in the 2019 approval, thankfully, that allows us to use the existing surface parking lots anywhere on the property on an interim basis. And so we can use this while the development is transitioning over the next couple of decades from a suburban office park that has a sea of parking and utilize those. And that is built into the proffers. And of course, our hope is that as this is a transit-rich environment, an increasingly transit-rich environment, people will walk and not have as many cars. But Chris Myers, you might want to just underscore anything or correct anything I may have misstated from a parking perspective.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. And again, Chris Myers with Urban. We are the applicant civil engineer. I'll just talk real briefly about some parking numbers. Andrew sort of shared just in conceptually where we were and mentioned some ratios. Starting with block N3, there's 24 units there. We have 48 parking spaces. So as Andrew said, that's parked the 2.0 for the residential. There's 7 visitor spaces required, and we'll talk about provided in just a second. On N1 and W2, we have 119 units. Again, 238 spaces for those 119 units. That again is parked at exactly a 2.0, 50% higher than the 1.3 requirement. For that block, there would be 35 visitor spaces required. So that's a total of 42 visitor spaces required. As Andrew mentioned, there are guest spaces or visitor spaces along Isaac Newton Square North, Isaac Newton Square West, Center Street, and then a few spaces along the Isaac Newton Square extension in between N2 and N3. There is a total of 54 spaces there versus the 42 guest spaces that would be required. We did, last time we were in front of you, we heard questions about Block N2. So we did go back and tabulate Block N2, and we found that Block N2 actually has 200 excess parking spaces above and beyond what would be required. Their requirement is 221 spaces. They are providing 421 spaces in their block. So if you take their 200 plus our 54 on the streets, there's a surplus, if you will, of about 254 spaces. That is not inclusive of, as Andrew said, the sea of parking. I don't have it quantified, but the existing surface lots that will remain in the middle of Isaac Newton Square until such time as those blocks are developed. And sort of you can see it here on the screen now. When the blocks are developed, similar to what's shown, additional on-street parking will be provided to replace some of the spaces that are lost. Certainly, we won't have 800 spaces on street, but there will be significant on-street parking provided at the time of development of those future blocks.
And thank you, Chris. And Greg Ruff, I don't know if you have anything else you want to add as far as agreements with ownership about the use of those spaces at all. If not, we can move on to landscaping.
And I would just add that in the ultimate, condition, the ultimate build out, there could also be garages, for, if there's commercial buildings coming in, there could be commercial garages for visitors to park in as well. So just a ample parking. We see it in the interim and in the ultimate long-term configuration.
And so to close out our discussion for this preliminary presentation, I'll turn it over to Will with Land Design just to walk through some of the updates to the landscaping. I think we've come to a pretty good place with FCON staff and with Park Authority staff. We received our final memos this past week, and we're pleased with the outcome of that. So, Will.
Thanks, Andrew. Thanks everyone for taking the time this evening to hear us out and give us some time to go through the design again. And for anyone who may not have been on the call last time, I'll try to go overview first and then go dive into each individual block in a little bit more detail. And then at the end, we can kind of pause, and if there are any further questions, walk through anything I may have gone too fast, or if anything piqued curiosity, we can jump back to that slide. But starting overall, I think Andrew hit it earlier, but I think overall, and working with staff, hearing you guys out, DRB, a multitude of internal conversations. I think the biggest goal with the 3 blocks, and of course with N2 as it is now and being proposed and being built, is that we want to make sure the idea and the goal here is that we're creating homes within a park, right? A lot of this urban context that we see in Reston, DC, Alexandria, it is difficult to prioritize green space. And so the opportunity here with the golf course to the northwest, and of course prioritizing both Nature's Edge and Willow Oak Park, really making sure those are the highlighted linear parks and kind of the anchors for these 3 blocks that we're proposing, as well as knitting it with N2 and creating more of a linear loop park instead of individual spaces, as well as the amenities that are found and proposed within each individual block or between each block. And of course, we'll touch a little bit on N3 as it is a little bit different from the original concepts. So that was one of those opportunities that we took on as something to help knit those 2 linear spaces of Nature's Edge and Willow Oak Park. If you go to the next slide. This kind of touches a little bit on that previous plan, and again, reiterating that we made sure to look at it as a bigger picture and make sure we're not losing any of that amenity spaces. So kind of simplifying the pink dots as the spaces or moments within both Nature's Edge and Willow Oak, and creating those as what we like to say is a park amenity, whether it be a bench or whether it be some kind of informational signage. Of course, starting to look at materiality. And as most of the people on the call know, the bigger amenities, whether it be the playground, the basketball court, dog run, things of that nature. But then, of course, being cognizant of that biophilic feeling of how each space is going to be a little bit different because of the reality of whether it be grading, constraints of utilities, stormwater, all of the above, right? But making sure we're still keeping the main goal. So if you go to the next slide, our current plan really tries to, keep that old plan, the CDP plan, as true as it can be. But now we are starting to look at the details and working with Urban and our team internally, and of course hearing county comments and everyone's comments. We really want to make sure we're highlighting, of course, the 2 linear spaces that I already mentioned, but now looking at things at a much finer combed in detail. And of course, Urban and land design really work together with not only understanding how the Willow Oaks will be impacted because of existing conditions and being very cognizant of that, and of course speaking with FCON and working together with them to make sure we are providing the most viable conditions and also providing that amenity for the future tenants of these spaces. And if you go to the next page, we start looking and talking about, okay, how do we start really making sure now that we understand the bigger picture of proposing both new green space and providing a viable conditions for what is already there, with the materiality, of course, that's going to go into the playground, for example, and how that's going to fit in to the context of how you're coming in from the south to the north and from the west to the east, or vice versa, right? And then, of course, looping around Nature's Edge Park, and how that materiality, whether it be the elevated pedestrian pathway by W2, that's a little bit more of a boardwalk feel, and how that kind of knits and stitches into the Willow Oak portion of N1 and N3, and how we're trying to look at pedestrian pavers that are a little bit more sensitive to the root system and the grading there, and making sure we're preserving the conditions that are right for the trees. And of course, starting to think about, making sure it's low maintenance and really durable materiality as we go around Nature's Edge. But again, looking at the old plan and making sure we're providing, if not the same or more of these park amenities, and starting to look at the lighting plan that Andrew mentioned earlier in the meeting. So if we jump to the next page, I'll start getting into more of the details, starting from W2, and I'll work my way through N1 and all the way to N3. But with W2, I think with this slide and the next slide, the big picture here is just making sure that as we start at that node that Andrew mentioned before, that kind of is going to be a future proposed connection for whatever is developed to the south, making sure that is still a place that can be used at day one of this development, and being cognizant, again, how we work with civil to use the grading to our advantage. We are at a high point here, and it's hard to tell it on these screens, but that's why the trail node is where it is and why we determined to end it there. Why not provide an amenity at a high point overlooking the golf course and giving it one of those park amenities that I mentioned earlier on the call. And then as you meander towards the north, you can go to the next slide. We start looking at the spaces from both interior, where the townhomes are going to have that muse condition. And again, really starting to look at the landscaping. I think Andrew also wanted to mention this too, taking inspiration and hearing out how the county was talking about buffering that N1 alley. We also wanted to look at both corners on the northwest and the southwest here as well, to have a little bit more buffering and being more of a sensitive condition there. There is a lot of utilities that we have to be cognizant of, but it's still allowed for an opportunity to use landscape as that tool to help buffer, whatever car circulation is going on the interior of the block, and making sure the pedestrian feels like they're in their own path or own amenity outside of the privacy of the townhomes on the inside. Go to the next slide. We start jumping into the W2 and N1 corner, or the joint of the parks, as we call it, we've been calling it. Here, I think it's a great opportunity to really start thinking about the details, as we mentioned earlier. Lighting is going to be big to really help highlight and make the pathway feel safe, especially on that Nature's Edge. And as well as starting to look at kind of interpretive signs, right? Paying an homage to the Willow Oaks here. So starting to look at those details as we start working through our way at site plan, and how this kind of creates one of those pause points for the whole community and the whole Isaac Newton as a whole, right? It's kind of creating that catalyst that we hope to see be developed and be proposed on the future blocks as we move forward. Go to the next slide. And these kind of give a little bit more of that taste that we mentioned earlier, and really kind of starting to look at the landscape, making sure it's realistic in terms of how we, play off the architecture, making sure we frame things correctly, but also be cognizant of just overall maintenance that the communities are going to be responsible of, and making sure that the spaces themselves are not overwhelming. And one of the big things here that you'll see in that slide 3 or that picture 3 is working with FCON and to make sure that, whatever mulch or whatever conditions are happening underneath these willow oaks are realistic. They're cognizant of any kind of, runoff or circulation. So making sure we're still staying true to that, but still providing that feel of a park or a linear park through willow oak. Let's go to the next slide. And now working all the way over to N3, I think this was one of the more unique spaces, of course, because it is a little bit newer than what was originally intended. But I think with that opportunity came this, what we're calling the Wayside Park. And it is the opportunity we're using to kind of stitch the Nature's Edge and Willow Oak on that wheelie side. And understanding not only is there some constraints or, hesitancy of being so close to wheelie and traffic on that side of the street. So we're hearing comments with the county of, bringing seating a little bit more inward and creating more of a buffer and being cognizant of that, but as well as making sure we're looking at all the details. So here it's a little hard to tell, but I think on the next slide, we start looking more at the easements and the conditions of what's really there existing and proposed. So it's kind of, bringing all these elements, whether you look at it as a puzzle, but I think that's what we strive for as a team, working with the civil, with client, with everyone, hearing the comments, understanding what's really out there, but then making sure those constraints don't deter what the end goal is, right? We're still trying to create this park space that hopefully is something that is not only an amenity for those who live there, but it kind of creates this gateway into both spaces and both linear parks. And go to the next slide. And then here are some shots of what we envision that space and how, obviously looking at the landscape, you can not really tell where the utilities are. So I think that's going to be our end goal, right? Not being overwhelming with the landscaping, being realistic, but then also creating these spaces or in these moments, whether it be park seating, signage, lighting is not in this, but I think that's going to be something we start looking at, especially, at evening shots. And then again, just complementing the architecture and the materiality to making sure the landscape can soften some of those stretches and, creating a space that hopefully, the tenants and then community members all around can really enjoy. Go to the next slide. So overall, I think, whether it be at W2 with its, new proposed landscaping and really enhancing the space on Nature's Edge and working all our way around Nature's Edge on the north side, or if you're coming from the east at N3 or, you're biking down and you want to kind of explore going east to west, I think the idea and end goal here is just to keep working together as we work through, the details and making sure that our end goal of creating 2 biophilic linear parks is more of one whole community and hopefully a catalyst for what is to come later on at Isaac Newton Square.
Right. Well, thank you very much. Tammy, that concludes our presentation. And, we appreciate everyone and the input from last time, as has been the case throughout the entirety of since we've been at this for the last 7 years, pretty much. So happy to answer any questions and appreciate your consideration. Tammy, I think you're on mute.
Before we go to questions from the committee, would you mind briefly giving us another explanation of the difference between stacked townhouses and side by side and the garages? The cars are not side by side, they're one in back of another. Is that correct? to get
Yeah.
two cars in the garage?
That is correct. And instead of them being separated vertically, where you have someone living above you and you have someone living below you, they are separated. You know, what is it? It's not. I'm sorry. Instead of being separated horizontally, it's separated vertically, where you have one person. Both entrances are along the main, along Isaac Newton Square. And then there's one unit that's primarily focused to the back, and then one unit that's primarily focused to the front. But Greg, why don't you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, that's right. You horizontally is 2/2s. You got a lower level unit that's 2 floors, and then there's sort of a party wall, and then there's an upper level unit that's 2 more floors, and where that's the old 2/2 stacked townhouse that everyone knows. This new concept has a 4-story townhouse, two 4-story townhomes basically joined at the rear, and then the party wall runs horizontally, vertically. We're both struggling with that one, Andrew.
Vertically, side to
vertically,
side.
vertically,
Right.
correct, up from the
Yes.
ground up to the sky.
Widthwise. Yes.
Yeah, so
Yes.
you end up with a rear unit and a front unit. And but again, the advantage is parking, with this back-to-back unit, you've got 2 parking spaces integral to the unit. You don't need a long driveway. With the stacked townhouse, the 2/2, you get 1 car in the garage, but then you need a long driveway to put the second car out there. So this is much more space efficient, this back-to-back product that we're building here. It's much
Okay.
more suited for an urban infill kind of project like we're doing here.
All right, I get that, but how do the people on the back unit away from the drive-in garage access their unit? There obviously is a stairwell somewhere. And
Yeah, the front door for both units, the front unit and the rear unit, the front door is out in the front of the building. So if you look at the front elevations that we submitted, you'll see a door for
correct.
each. Yeah,
Yes.
everyone
That's
walks
what
in the
I
front.
want the committee to understand
Mhm.
is you're getting a garage, but you also have a stairwell in it to access the back unit. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Committee questions. Lynn.
Thank you. And Andrew, just want to thank you and Chris and Greg and Will, for all the work that you've done, and a great job addressing our concerns with parking. Really appreciate that. I do have to say that I am shocked that the road from nowhere is continuing to show up on these documents. You could please get that thing out of there. I am going to continue to have heartburn and consternation until I see that thing gone from any drawings that you all submit. I'm also curious, you had mentioned something about a trail that is going to connect to the golf course. And I know one of the issues that the golf course owners are having today are pedestrians walking on the golf course. So I think doing something like that is going to invite pedestrian traffic on the golf course is ill-advised. People are going to get hurt. So we are not in Scotland or Ireland where it's okay just to walk out on the golf course. So I just think, yeah,
your Scottish law that you could just do that.
Right.
All right. So one, I think it's a quick AI fix that I can do to make sure that the road from nowhere is gone. But number two, this was just something that the county wanted us to build in to sort of future-proof a potential connection in case the golf course owner in the future wanted it. It's nothing that is going to be built without both owners coming together or anything like that. We have no plans to do any connection. It's just that the county staff wanted us to future-proof it, to make it easy for a pedestrian connection in the future if one was ever, desired. So
Andrew, real quick, I'll add one thing to that is where our trail ends at the end of W2, we're actually quite a bit grade separated by probably, I don't know, I'd say 10 to 15 feet above the golf course elevation, down very steep slopes through the woods. So like Andrew said, we don't have any proposal to connect or even provide anything that looks like a connection through that area. We're terminating ours. The easement Andrew mentioned was just the county's desire that at some point in the future, somebody could come in and tie into that trail in whatever direction they chose.
Okay, thank you. And, I did pick up on your reference to, now that we're getting into the detail. I heard a lot of reference to the county and FCON. I didn't hear any reference to the Reston planning principles or Reston design guidelines. And I'd really like to, make sure that as we're getting into the detail, that we are not forgetting that we are in Reston. Reston has planning principles. It has its own design guidelines, comprehensive plan that are specific to Reston. And the county, I can appreciate that you are, complying with county standards, but please don't forget that we're in Reston and we have our own set of guidelines.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
was it, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you. I would just say, when we're at the FDP stage, the final development plan, we're actually now building to the guardrails that were set forth with the 2019 rezoning. And as far as the design philosophy that undergirds the conceptual development plan and the rezoning that was approved in 2019, the fourth tenet of that was Robert Simon's 7 principles for the founding of Reston. So the embracing of the traditional multi-generational livable communities, creating the dynamic public realm. That was the fourth pillar that underscored the whole design of this. And that's baked into the original approval from 7 years ago. I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you.
So
I appreciate that. That's great. And the last thing that I did want to bring to this team's awareness and also to the committee is that how are we doing with the stormwater runoff detention? There have been folks, as you all know, I serve as president of Reston Citizens Association, and we have heard people talking about runoff coming from the construction site. So I just want to make sure that there are plans in place to fulfill the county requirements for stormwater detention and management.
Yeah, I can
and-
speak
and-
to that.
yeah,
Sorry,
go
Andrew,
ahead, Chris.
go ahead, Andrew. I'll let you.
Well, I was
lead
just going to say the beauty of the 2021 road and infrastructure plan for these northern blocks was to have a unified stormwater detention facility or approach that captures everything, highly efficient, rather than having it be block by block. And so, Chris, didn't want to steal your thunder at all, but if you just want to provide a quick summary on that.
Yeah, and Andrew, that's absolutely right. So there is the public improvement plan, which does the infrastructure. Isaac Newton Square sort of establishes the various blocks, but doesn't develop them themselves. That plan, which is approved and under construction, that plan proposes and is actively building the overall stormwater management devices. I don't believe they are quite finished. I think they're still working on those a little bit. In a short amount of time, they should be finished. Runoff should be getting to those. And that will be the first step to really managing the stormwater that you just spoke to. Any of the issues that you've noted where maybe there was some runoff from an erosion and sediment control or construction condition, that will be resolved. Water will be routed through these large underground vaults, if you will. And that will be the management strategy that's used long term to satisfy not just the PI plan, but also the individual blocks. I think there's I believe there's 3 individual stormwater devices. 1.5, maybe, I think I understand, are either finished or very close to being finished.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think that concludes my questions.
All right, next up, Katie.
Hi, good evening. Thank you so much. So I just have 2 questions. And I know Tammy went over the townhome makeup. For lack of, just like from my understanding, are these like 2/2 piggyback style to where nobody has a backyard?
These would be just like rear load townhomes, which I know there's a lot of people on here that don't like rear load townhomes, but just like rear load townhomes, all of these units, whether they're standard townhomes or they are the side by side, back to back units, they would all have a rear alley. And so one of the things that we did with this application, again, going back to the original approval, was to have a substantial amount of public open space. And I know people want to have, some people would like to have a rear lawn or rear area. That's not offered with this product type. But Greg, I don't know if you want to speak to that.
No, yeah, that's when you a front garage townhome with a rear backyard is more of a suburban type of housing product. So in more urban locations like this, it's pretty common to see the rear loaded townhouse like we're talking about.
Okay. And they're not like, and so I guess I was confused when it was like, I don't know why I was confused when you were explaining it to Tammy. These are not like piggyback. Like everybody has a front area and a back area, whether it be an alleyway or a front yard, or these are like piggyback to where they are. You just come in one way and that's it. There's no backyard or front yard. It's just one entrance. Is that right? Does that make sense? Am I making any sense? Like, do you guys have a photo of it? Maybe I could.
Yeah, you know what?
Like
Katie,
do you remember like the old
yeah.
piggyback? I think that's what they were called, where it was sort of like you had like a front door and then you had like no back door.
All right, Greg, I don't know if this is helpful.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, the floor plans are always helpful. And I will mention we're doing another community in Alexandria where we're already building this. It's called Eisenhower Pointe on Eisenhower Avenue in Alexandria. And if you go on that website, Eisenhower Pointe, you can see photos and you can see floor plans and you can take you can do a virtual tour of both units, the front facing unit and the rear facing unit. And you can get I think a better idea. And then these floor plans also illustrate how it works. So there's an alley behind.
How many units are in a building? 2 or 4?
Well, there's sort of what we call a pod. There's a 24-foot wide, say, by 52-foot deep pod, and that consists of a front unit and a rear unit. And then in each building, there could be a building with 5 or 6 pods. So 10 to 12 units in a building, but each pod is a front unit and a rear unit, kind of paired together.
Okay, but there's nobody on top of anybody. It is
Correct.
just, okay,
That's right.
all right, that's where I was confused. Okay, my second question, I think you just explained this to Lynn, so I'm pretty sure I heard this correctly. The only connection you're talking about is a trail, not a road to the golf course eventually. You're just talking about some kind of like a walking trail, maybe eventually, but you're not saying there'd be like a road easement to connect this location into the, okay.
That's correct. That's right.
Yeah.
And
No
county
Hidden Creek
wants,
Parkway.
and the county are the ones that are saying they really want this trail connection to an active golf course.
They don't want a trail connection. They're looking at this as an opportunity to grab what they can while they can, and to facilitate a potential future connection. Could be 40 years in the future or whatever, but to build in the technology so that if a connection is desired, they've already got the rights to make that connection occur. They don't have to come back and negotiate with the ownership decades from now in order to get that.
I understand. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very, very much.
Yep.
Okay, Lynn, do you have another question? Is your hand up from before?
Oh, sorry, I will take it down.
Okay,
That's from before.
Jared.
Yeah, so I have a question. Can we go to or look at block W2? And I'm curious about that western corner, sort of on your plan, what would be the southwest corner? You show that's where the trail is between W2 and the golf course. So if you zoom in like to that,
See,
the other one. Yeah,
go
go up. So what is happening where the current number 2 is? Is that asphalt runoff towards those benches? I just don't understand that corner right there.
Will?
I can talk a little bit about that.
Chris, yeah.
So that space was specifically requested by Fairfax County Stormwater staff. We pushed back against that. This came up in both the review of our legislative application that you see in front of you, as well as a concurrently processing site plan. They have stated that they must have a vehicular access over or near the underground stormwater management facility that's located about where the letter A is, that's just
Okay.
below that number 2. We had tried to make the argument that they could simply park on the street or park in one of the parking spaces across the street to do general maintenance, clean up trash, whatever it needs to be. They were adamant that they have a parking space where we've depicted it here. So
Okay.
we will be landscaping that so that it really separates that paved area from the seating area. It will not have it will not be parking. It will be striped so that people are not allowed to park there. It will not be a parking space. Essentially, it will be unused asphalt until or unless the county decides to bring a maintenance vehicle in and park there very short term, do a little bit of work, and then come back out.
Okay. Right. It was just confusing to me. So thanks for the.
Sure.
Sounds like it was maybe a little confusing to you too. So
It was a little bit, but I think we've got a solution that we don't love, but I think it gets the county what they need.
It was
Okay.
more disappointing than it was confusing. We're not crazy about that
Yeah,
space, but it had to
exactly.
be.
No, it's not. That's what I was like. It does not fit the overall scheme and
No.
all of that. Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
David and Sue.
Yes, I know that Fairfax County wants you to incorporate a lighting plan. Echoing Lynn's concern, I'm very concerned about that lighting will meet specific Reston design requirements so that it is a softer lighting, that it is down lighting. So I'm wondering if you can commit to following those Reston design plan requirements for lighting.
So we have a commitment for outdoor lighting. They have to be energy efficient and they have to be downwardly directed to the interior of the property. Cannot do anything as far as, except for safety reasons, create glare or light spillage onto adjacent structures, roads, or the pedestrian realm. And we have to, let's see, recessed lighting also has to be directly or directionally shielded to mitigate the impact on adjacent properties. So that's the requirements that we built into the original zoning.
Okay, and that meets the Reston design requirements?
As far as I know, and it has not come up in staff's review, looking at the comprehensive plan.
It wouldn't necessarily, but I would appreciate if you compare that to the Reston lighting requirements.
Sure.
And make sure that those lights are soft. The other questions I had address landscaping, and I do appreciate the detail you put into landscaping. I have two questions. One is concerning concrete pathways and connections. Are those permeable, which would be much better for the willow oaks and for the environment, especially the sloped areas, et cetera, to prevent runoff? And if it's not permeable, could it be permeable concrete or a permeable surfacing?
The ones in front of the Willow Oak specifically, you're asking?
Not necessarily the ones that are, you have concrete pathways going throughout the project and, some with benches on, there are connections leading people through the projects. So as much as possible, those surfaces should be permeable.
Yeah, so overall, I think the design, requirements and the ethos of the project itself is, working together obviously internally, but then, hearing out everyone's comments with the county. The concrete paths are for any areas that are new or proposed, right? Connecting mainly Nature's Edge, where new landscaping, any kind of, fine grading that will, work together with urban and the civil team to make sure that water runoff is going to the right direction and not necessarily a need for permeability because of no existing, landscaping that would require that need at the time of installation. I think our concern or our focus of any kind of materiality that was important to necessitate the viability of the Will Oaks, as you mentioned, and any existing vegetation, for example, anything on that kind of the south and the east side of W2, we did look at materiality that would help us, create the most safe and nurturing condition for the willow oak. So on W2, we are proposing an elevated pathway, whether it be wood or something that, obviously it is permeable, it's elevated from the root system, so that's important there. And then as we march our way through N1 and N3, it's a paver system. So it's a paver, not a concrete system. That's material is similar to whatever is being proposed at W2. But we are looking at, with our civil team, at drainage on the north side to make sure it's not impeding into the root system, and working with them on some of the cross section details. And if you go there today, there is a steeper slope there that there is on W2. So with that condition, I think the most viable approach that we were able to get to and work with the county was kind of push the paver pathway as far away as we can from the root system and at the bottom of that hill, to just create more of a controlled condition, as opposed to anything that's going to be, overall long maintenance, not viable for the community. So we want to make sure these conditions stay long term, right? And so the most viable condition that we were able to agree upon, and I think long term, as far as the way it would look as well, right? We still want to make sure these things last and aren't constantly trying to be fixed or replaced. This is where we ended up on those frontages. So we definitely took a deep dive, and especially on the N1 and N3 frontages, and the paver system with the drain on the opposite side of the root system was the most viable and more agreed upon with the entire team, and with working with county to make sure that was how we can help protect those willow oaks there.
And then my third question had to do with playground equipment and surfacing. I know it's a small item, but is often overlooked that there are LEED standards for playground products and projects, and there is playground equipment and especially surfacing that can focus on sustainability. And so I would like to see you take a very close look on the selections that you make for that, and make sure that it is follows the Public Playground Safety Manual, which was done by Consumer Product Safety Commission. That would give you both safer equipment and also safe surfacing. The teal color I'm not very fond of for the surfacing. I don't know on colors. Certainly there are colors you want to definitely stay away from. Anything having to do with yellows or orange playground equipment just draws flies and bees and wasps and everything else. But Reston likes natural looking playgrounds, and so if you can take a look at that again and try to naturalize the playground and take a very close look at the surfacing, because the surfacing for safety is essential.
I agree. No, it's definitely not a small thing in our opinion. Definitely a big thing we've already started looking at, working with the top providers there, whether it's recycled materiality that they do come in a more porous condition, and they are rated to the highest for safe and fall surfacing at any height. So that is already being looked into, and kind of work with the client team and internally, and then heard on the the actual play features as well. And as far as color, I think we're still in the works of what's going to be the best for the branding and everything, but definitely natural or that nature we'll definitely look into, your greens, and kind of looking at what products out there are more sustainable. But also I think the biggest thing is just that the ones that last longer too, right? It's always sad kind of taking my niece out or someone to the parks out around, that are just, a little bit forgotten. So it's definitely one of the bigger things that we want to make sure we're focusing on. So I appreciate the comment there.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Thank you.
I just have a couple of things. I understand N2 is not part of your project. Do you know what N2 is planned to be?
Can you put the map up so we can see that, please?
Yeah, let me just let me go back to it and let me see if I can. I think I've got a graphic of it. Just see, where is it? All right, hang on for 1 second. Of course, sorry. Hang on, let me make sure I got the right slide deck here. So I've got a pretty good graphic of it. At least I did. It's going to be a 7-story multifamily building with 345 units. So that's right in line with what, okay, now I've got it. Now I've got a good one. And that David, that was approved back in 2023. And so that's kind of the middle one of these blocks.
Sure.
And I think that Greg, correct me if I'm wrong, or Mike, Sally, if you're on here, but I think that they're going to hopefully break ground on this later this year. And
yeah, it's a fourth quarter commencement of construction.
okay. And with that came the first section of Willow Oak Park that was approved. And we dealt with many of the same issues on Willow Oak Park there that we're dealing with here, kind of relitigating these over and over again. But we were able to build in some technology back then related to the tree replacement narrative and tree maintenance narrative. And so we've got the Willow Park there. And then on the north side was the Nature's Edge Park, and that there will be an overlook. There will be a sport court, and then there will be a publicly accessible dog park where it says Nature's Edge Park. That's where the dog run will be. It'll be a pretty substantial dog park there.
Okay, Andrew, thank you for explaining that. My purpose for asking is that my recollection was that N3 was supposed to be, now no longer is, but was supposed to be a multi-story, multi-family building. And I assumed, well, no, I think I read that was where you were going to park some of your affordable and workforce housing locations. Is that now shifted over to N2?
Well, so N2 was approved for 345 units. There will be 47 WDUs in that block. These 3 townhouse blocks will deliver 19 workforce dwelling units. The N3, what you are correct, good memory. The N3 was supposed to be a multifamily building with up to 180 units.
Right.
And we went out to market twice on that, had no takers whatsoever, largely because of the size. It's not a good, especially with the vault that Will talked about. And so we had to shift to a different product if we were going to get any kind of development on that site, any kind of housing supply. So no, we're not shifting the WDUs over to N2 to make up the lost difference. The overall project, the whole 2,100 units over the 32 acres, is supposed to have 13.5% WDUs. And so with these blocks all together, we are at 13.52%. So slightly, we're tracking on par with what was expected. In fact, we're just slightly 0.2% better than where we actually have to be right now. So I know that doesn't sound like much, but we're tracking.
It would be nice if you could be 1.2% above where you're planning.
Sure.
So the overall, the entire development, north and south, you are scattering these workforce. You're doing just workforce housing. You're not doing affordable.
Well, it depends on what the ultimate product type is. For example, if this block N2 had been a different building type, we would have had to have done affordable dwelling units as well as WDUs. So, as time goes on, by and large, these will probably be workforce dwelling units, for the rest of them, because they're mostly multifamily blocks. But again, it depends on what the market bears. I mean, who knows where we're going to be 10 years from now, 5 years from now. So is it conceivable there could be a mixture of ADUs and WDUs? Absolutely. But yeah, with this product type now, it's been WDUs so far.
Okay. Well, it's important, I think, for that product to be scattered throughout the development, the several sections of the development, and not concentrated in any way. And just to put in a plug for a higher percentage, with the number of dwelling units that this project is going to produce over time, I think it would be prudent, if not downright patriotic, for you to increase the percentage.
No, I appreciate that. And then one of the other things too, let me just say, we did agree to have a quarter of our WDUs go down to the 70% of AMI. And that was before that, so, and we are scattering these. There will be WDs in each of these blocks, not concentrated in any one building. So we are living up to that so far. So
good. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Excellent question. Reese, please.
Thank you, Tammy. And thank you to all the presenters for the always clear and informative presentation. I'm going to try to not get into the weeds too much here, but my question is generally about bicycle facilities within the project. I think when I was looking at that amenities map that Will was speaking through earlier, there was a bike rack maybe on the N1 side and then one over by Wheelie. And I think if my understanding of the project is correct, there's planned to be a bike lane on Wheelie. And I just kind of wanted to ask about future consideration of expanding some of those bike facilities. I think that's an important part of, the transit-oriented development equation, pushing more people towards those multimodal options. And considering things like protected bike parking, kind of like what they have at some of the metro stations, or a capital bike share station. I'm wondering if that's been a part of the conversation at all.
Yeah, so we do have a proffer 47 that discusses bicycle infrastructure. You are correct that Wheelie Avenue, when these blocks developed, will be there will be an on-road bike lane. I don't think that's planned to be a separated bike lane like what you might have in Roslyn and in Boston stuff, but that goes back to the original approval. There is a requirement for us to place a capital bike share pad and station on block S3, which is one of the southern blocks. And then there is also required within each of the site plans to have the designation of short and long-term secure bicycle parking spaces within each site plan. So I don't know, Chris Myers, if you want to say anything more about that, or Will, or anything like that, but we do have to have the bicycle parking installed prior to the first rough for each of the blocks.
Yeah, I'll just confirm, Andrew, what you said, that it's not a protected bike lane on Wheelie, but it is a separated bike lane, that it's its own lane. It's not a Sharo or something like that.
Okay, and all the roads going through Isaac Newton Square, are those all shared roads? There's no dedicated bike lane on those, right?
Correct.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure my understanding was correct there. Well, yeah, that's great to know. Thank you for answering my question. I always am in favor of the more bicycle facilities, the better. So good to hear. Thank you.
Thank you, Reese.
Thank you, Reese. Michelle.
Hi, thank you. I wanted to also talk about the playgrounds for a second, because in addition to what Sue mentioned, it would be great if you guys could even get a bit more creative with it. It would be such a shame if you put so much thought and detail into so many aspects of the entire property, and then the playground just looks like any other playground. So, I'd just like to put a plug to please consider making it something that reflects Reston's history, Reston's approach to designing community, and obviously the biophilic nature too. It would be great to have a tree house or something else that just better connects it. And so I would like to just say, please be creative. Don't just give us something that we see in every other suburb. On one point I did want to bring up, because it's not something necessarily I think you guys can do anything about. However, I believe you guys are zoned for Sunrise Valley Elementary. And in the last budget, it said that Sunrise Valley Elementary School will be at capacity, I think, by 2030. And then once we add on the the buildings that we're considering tonight, as well as N2, we will reach capacity if their calculations are correct even sooner. And these are just, this one little section. And as we know, we have a lot more coming up, and potentially a significant amount more coming up with this new Reston East study that could be underway. So it's something that we all need to pay attention to because, as far as I know, FCPS is not actively considering anything to change Sunrise Valley boundaries or consider how they'll handle this. But we are looking at a real potential for overcapacity at Sunrise Valley as well as our middle school and high school. And I don't think, based on what I'm seeing about Skyview, that Skyview is going to do much of anything to lower the capacity issues at Sunrise Valley. So it's something I think we all need to look at, and it would be great to just in your communications with FCPS, if it could be clear what they're actually considering when they're looking at what their capacity, because as far as I can tell, that is limited to only what has gone through site plan, or maybe it's actually what's actually being built. And so a lot of the properties that we've already approved and considered are not in their calculations for capacity. So this is probably also something to flag for you, Mark, that we're looking at some pretty major numbers here with everything that's coming down the pike. And so we need to watch that.
If I could also just say too, I'm looking for the SCPS memo on this, and the project.
I have it.
And,
If you,
yeah. No, I mean, on this project specifically, they issue one for each of the zoning cases and stuff like that. And I can't seem to find it right now. I will say that we have a per pupil capacity contribution, cash contribution that we have to provide to FCPS. And I think your point about getting creative as far as the playground is good. It's something that we will definitely keep in mind. Will, please take a note of that. And then the history of it, I just wanted to also say too, there is a requirement that we built in, and maybe it's because I care, I don't know, but there's a requirement that we built in that we are going to be providing interpretive signage on the site related to the location of Gulf Reston's headquarters within the vicinity of Block N1 and mid-century architecture within the vicinity of Block W2, and then eventually in Block E1A, the historic offices of the Reston Association as well. So I just wanted to mention that we are also going to be trying to honor the history as best we can of what preceded this as a park overall. So.
That's great. It would be great. One idea that I've had for a while that would be really wonderful to see is there's some way to incorporate in a playground, design your community and some movable features. But again, just going back to, one of the first planned communities. And so I've seen some at some museums and other places where you can, there's parts that can be moved and thought through, but I think there's a lot that can be done, and I would just hate to see such a great opportunity missed. So I thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Any other committee members with questions? Seeing none, I will go next. Okay, Andrew, can you please put up the graphic of the entire Isaac Newton Square?
Yeah, pull that up. Okay, that's the graphic illustrative that I showed earlier.
Thank you. To this point, I would like to say that with the exception, and it's a huge exception, of the sports field at the very southern tip, what you are showing in concept are pretty much buildings with private courtyards, which I totally approve of. I think people living in multifamily buildings need to have private courtyards. I am not one of these that wants the public roaming through every single place. But that doesn't give a lot of opportunity for real parks. And this particular place is not near any Reston Association amenities. So what you put on this site is what these 2,100 DUs, which are going to be over 4,000 people, are going to depend on for recreation. And going forward, I would heartily suggest that somewhere, somehow, there has to be more active adult. You've got one basketball court up at the very north. Is that a full court or half court?
So that's a half court. And when we've designed the blocks, we had to meet the urban parks framework requirements that the county set forth, which is based upon the population and the density, and making sure that there was enough active recreation uses that came about. And a lot of that is overloaded with these first 3 blocks. I think your point's well taken. You're right. Within each block, there will be individual courtyards. And then we have the athletic field contribution that will either be used for, athletic field elsewhere, but, presumably for the athletic field of the southern block. But you also have the rain garden meander, which runs through the heart of the project, which will be provided. And so we've met the requirements, and I think we've gone a little bit above Chris Myers of those requirements as well. But I think your point's taken. And then, so yeah.
What is this thing about the athletic field may be built elsewhere? We are counting on that athletic field.
Yeah, no. We have an escrow that we're paying into. And the park authority can determine when we're ready to move forward with this athletic field. I mean, it would take a major zoning amendment to change anything related to that athletic field. So.
But that athletic field does not become reality until what? All the blocks are done?
Till the northern blocks are done. That's right. That's right. As we work our way south.
Only, not the southern, not the central and
yeah. I don't have the exact date as to when that's going to be, but right now there's nobody. I know that there's a need for an athletic field today, but there's nobody living on this property right now. And so we build up over time, and then we have the cash to actually be able to finance the construction of the athletic field, which is a pretty large commitment. Let's see.
Well, you're freaking me out with this idea that it might not ever happen.
No. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. But it's later. You are correct that it's later in the process. And again, I'm trying to figure out.
I would thought it was much later in the process. Yeah. In other words, I'll be long dead before that athletic field. Well, and as far as nobody living there, who cares? There's a shortage of athletic fields in the entire region. The sooner that can be put in and put to use while there's parking available in the non-developed, we're better off. So, so please book that in your thought process, because I call a spade here. The meander is a wandering path. It's not exactly active recreation. So, and I appreciate the meander. I think that's environmentally, ecologically sound. I think it'll probably help you with the stormwater issue. But it is not active recreation in my book. The playground is for kids. The half court basketball is active. That's half court, not full. And then the southern athletic field. Okay. Now, would you please go to the drawing or a close-up of W2? I have a question.
Okay. Zoom on down to that. Any thoughts on crumb rubber at all? You remember that conversation? Let's see. All right, I'm going to share my screen again.
You definitely don't want to go to the crumb rubber decision.
No, I don't.
That was a hell no.
Rubber. All right.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right. How many units are in this block?
61 units.
Okay, 61 total units.
Correct.
And how many parking spots are on this block? Outdoor parking spots, guest spots, service spots.
There's 11 surface spaces with an additional 7 spaces along Isaac Newton Square West.
Okay, immediately adjacent to this?
Immediately adjacent.
Okay, all right. At the top row of these townhouses, we have one lowly thing that's dropped down. And I'm just wondering how you get into the garage if they're tandem garages.
So you would pull up. So I don't know if you can see where my cursor is, but the garage entrance is here. This is a specially designed unit.
Yeah, and that's and Andrew, real quick, that's a standard fee simple townhouse that does not have tandem garages. That's just a side-by-side garage in that unit.
Okay,
that whole row is fee simple townhouses with standard 2-car side-by-side garages.
Thank you. That
Sure.
answers that question, because I was thinking Houdini would have to be there with a twirler to get tandem spaces in that garage. Okay.
We require them to drive a Fiat and park in that garage.
That's right.
Yes, exactly, on a swivel.
That's right.
All right. I appreciate all of the detail. John Carter, do you have any questions? I'm sure you do.
A couple. Are we ready?
Yes, please.
Okay. So one of the things we started with is those units along Wheelie. And I actually like what you're doing. This is less dense and greener along Wheelie. I think that's a good approach to it. If you remember, I believe that was the senior housing, much more dense, and it went into that setback. Maybe you've already talked about that. Could you give us the approach? This is a large project, 2,100 units. So what happens along the way? Hopefully the last building doesn't end up doing all the open space and all of the affordable housing units. So could you explain, at least in this section, the approach to affordable housing? So basically the answer I'll give it, that's the question, and the answer should be, yes, we're building it as we go. So what is the real answer? Both in terms of the affordable housing, we might as well do the open space at the same time.
Yeah. So again, it was basically the affordable commitment of 13.5% affordable or WDUs, as well as the open space including the urban parks framework. All of that was calculated on the overall 32 acres and the approximately the maximum of 2,100 units on the property. We certainly have the right, if you will, to push a lot of the stuff to later, and just argue each time, well, it's got to be, at the end of the day, that's what the commitment is. What has happened on each of these blocks, though, is that the county has basically asked for the commitments for the urban parks and for the affordable with each of these blocks to demonstrate how they're going to be met for all 4 of these blocks. And so as far as how we are tracking, and this goes to David's comment earlier, we are tracking right on par with where we want to be. And in fact, because of the lower densities with the townhomes, we don't generate, like the playground, for example, that amount is not generated by the number of people that we are putting onto these blocks. And so we are front end loading a lot of the development commitments for the urban parks with these blocks up front. And so the park authority and housing staff has been analyzing both affordable commitments, workforce commitments, and the open space commitments on a block by block basis. And for lack of a better term, has basically given us a clean bill of health that we are tracking each time as we go through.
So each phase has its proportion of affordable housing and open space as we go through this, so that the last phase doesn't end up doing it all or a bulk of it all at once, right?
Correct. Yeah. So if we had
Yeah.
started, with the middle blocks, for example, where there is the rain garden meander, but really no, as Tammy pointed out, like no active kind of space, we probably would be deficient, in that. But because we're starting at the north, and that's where we have the Nature's Edge Park and the Willow Oak Park, we are now able to front end load a lot of that. The other thing too that's on the screen here, as you correctly point out, this block M3 was planned for 180 units in some sort of capacity, be it multifamily residential, senior housing, or a hotel. And what we've been able to do by reducing the density and the footprint is capture the space that's along Wheelie Avenue that's shown here and create a new open space that was never contemplated under the original
Right.
rezoning.
Right.
And what that's done then, and it's just, sometimes you can't achieve all the density that you plan for, right? But what that's done is that it's allowed us to link up the Willow Oak Park all along Wheelie with the Nature's Edge Park to have one continual circuit. So I think that that's been an innovative use of land in this case.
Yes, I think we'll all be happy with that, keeping Wheelie greener. But just a word about the units. I have looked at those units in Alexandria. I think it's nice to see some change. 2/2s might be okay for some, but the stairs and living on top and sort of intermingled the way those units are designed is difficult, I think. Not my favorite units. I'm anxious to see how these will work. The notion that nobody lives over top of anybody else, everybody has a front, and the back might be an alley, but at least everybody has one, a front and a back. So I'm anxious to see how that works out. They look pretty good in Alexandria. There's still the rear loaded townhouses, which some don't like, but as a stacked unit, I think it's a better approach, but we'll see. Do you know how many, I'm keeping track of these, the jobs and housing. I guess we don't have to have it for tonight, but I'm curious to see where we are. How many jobs would we be losing and how many housing units would be gaining in this project? And so I'm starting to ask this question for each project as we go through. Or maybe if you don't have that, do you have the square footage of the office buildings that are there today?
Mike, Sally, do you happen to know what the square footage of the buildings? Because the buildings are now gone, of course.
Yes.
But,
Total, it's about 500,000 square feet of office product. We probably demoed, it was 3 buildings, probably 125 to 150,000 square feet of office space. But understand those buildings were old.
Right.
Occupancy wasn't great. So we probably did the market a favor by getting rid of them and convert them to residential. So
there's the old saying, you can't lose something you don't have. So that's
correct. Well put. Absolutely.
I think a good notion to keep track. We have this notion that we forget there is a balance of jobs and housing in Reston as a total, although we're a little bit heavier on the job side, which is appropriate on the silver line, and that's what the plan is built on. But as we go through our the 2020s here, we're losing some jobs and gaining lots of housing. Let's see. I like the comment for Michelle on the schools. That's another thing that goes with the housing going up. I was part of at the planning commission talking about the Skyview High School, and I said, well, that's fine, but where's the intermediate school? And that's the one weakness, I think, in this. For elementary schools, we have 2 potential ones underway. The plan said we need 3, so we're not doing too bad, although whether that's a concrete, I think it will be soon. the two elementary schools, and Skyview will help a slight bit on South Lakes, but it is the intermediate school that is, we don't really have a site. So anyway, and then the bikeway comments, of course, you know, that this adjoins the WNOD trail, so we have a pretty good connection. It's just a question of getting to it. Okay, those are my comments.
Thank you, Commissioner Carter. I have a couple other things. Is this obviously I'm asking this question, I'm thinking it's obvious, but I want to be sure. Are you phasing one block and then the next and then the next? How is this going to work? Are you going to start building everything at the same time?
Yeah, we will be starting at W2, and we want to keep a little bit of space between us and the multifamily building going up on N2. So we want to leave N1 for a period of time to be sort of a buffer. So we'll start in W2 and have our model building there. And then as the multifamily building gets closer to completion, we'll move over to N1 and start working over there. My expectation is N3 over on Wheelie will be the last land bay that we build.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. Also, are these units for sale or rent or both?
Everything's for sale.
Everything for sale, but not the multifamily building. Is
Yeah,
that
well,
for
no,
sale too?
sorry, that's
Is
not
that
us. So
condos?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't-
Those are
Andrew, do you know?
rental. Yeah, those will be rental residential.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, but everything else is for sale.
Correct.
Okay, so, and then there will be interim HOAs, and they will be responsible. Your landscaping is to die for. I have some of that. The maintenance will kill you. So, the HOA will pay for the maintenance of that fabulous landscaping.
It'll be the homeowners association for our development. We'll take care of some of it, but then there will be a master association that will take care of a lot of the landscaping along Nature's Edge and up along Wheelie Avenue and so forth. So there'll be two layers of owners associations within the
Two
project.
layers.
Yeah.
Super. That's really good to know. Okay, and that's the master is not Reston Association, it's an internal master.
Correct. That's
Okay.
right.
Do any of the units have elevators? I'm thinking of ADA.
Yes, the townhomes, the fee simple townhomes, we are designing those to all take elevators as an option, but we hope to offer them all with elevators, and we expect a good number of them people will select elevators for those townhomes.
Okay, and what is the price point?
That we don't know. It's early on and a lot of variables that come into play, so we don't really, I wouldn't even want to make a guess at this point.
Well, if we're talking about townhomes with elevators, I think we're talking, almost $1 million. So based on what else is out there. Okay. All righty. Anybody else have any other questions?
I have
I
one,
did.
Tammy.
I'm sorry.
Tammy,
Yes, please.
the
John
jobs
Carter, then
housing.
Michelle.
So it would be, this is all theory. So 500,000 housing units is about 1,500 jobs. We probably never had 1,500 there, but that's what it would be. And the housing units, you'd need about 3,000 jobs to serve 2,100. Well, wait a minute.
Hmm.
How many housing units? I got the, is it
2,100
2,100?
units.
Okay.
Yeah, 2,100 units.
So yeah, it's about 3,000 jobs necessary to feed 2,100 units. So anyway, just for those keeping track.
Right, and
Not
13,
that this site does not have to be balanced. I wasn't indicating that. It's the
yeah,
whole.
but that's helpful. And the other
Yeah.
point is 13% of 2,100 for WDUs is 273 WDUs.
Yeah.
So just so people, and what do we really need? We really need affordable units, the truly affordable. The WDUs help, but they're not what the county is dying for. So let's point that out.
So you
Okay,
might get 50 affordable out of the 210. Is that what you said?
we
210.
would hope
Yeah.
so. You know,
Yeah.
and this 2,100 DUs, and we're going to get 50 affordable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Michelle, you had a question.
Yeah, forgive me. I was a few minutes late. Did you address whether or not the townhomes will be members of RA?
So we have a proffered requirement to negotiate in good faith to have the townhomes, the for sale units, join RA. We had a relatively positive meeting with Mr. Lusk and Ms. Serio, who I think is on the call here, on May 7th. And we had our questions answered, and now we are, I guess, Greg, you have forwarded that information on to your financing and marketing folks as well. So
right.
I think it's our intention that we are going to proceed, and that decision will be made later on. But it was a very positive meeting.
Okay, that's great to hear because I'll tell you just from experience with friends who live in the newer townhomes across Wheelie and closer towards the toll road, it really becomes a challenge. They're like, well, we can't go to the pools, we can't participate, and so to have that cohesive community, it would be really fabulous. And quite frankly, it's a pretty darn good deal too. So thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thanks, Michelle. Anyone else? Last call. All right. Andrew is here for a vote. Anyone want to make a motion?
Tammy, this is David. I will recommend we approve, we recommend approval of this to the Planning and Zoning and the Board of Supervisors as presented.
I'll second that.
Okay, Jared. David made the motion and Jared seconded. All in favor, raise your hand.
And that's, Tammy, that's 2 for us.
Okay.
It looks like your Wi-Fi network isn't connected to the internet.
Pardon me?
I think that was an AI talking in somebody's background.
Oh, thank you.
Sorry, that was me. Sorry about that.
All righty. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 for, all opposed. Hands down.
Sorry, Tammy, I didn't know if I got my hand up in time. I had taken
did,
it down.
you did.
Did you get my vote?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Anyone opposed? Abstain? All righty. You're approved, Andrew.
I want to thank everybody for this. We look forward to meeting with you all in the next blocks. It's an iterative process. We've been at this for a long time, and we're not going anywhere. So thank you all.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you all very much.
Thank
And
you.
protect our field.
Yep.
Because I'm watching. I'm not dead yet. Okay. And our next case is Brian Winterhalter. Are you on board and are you ready to go?
I am here. Hi, Tammy. Hi, everyone.
Oh,
Good evening.
hi. This
I
is
am
Lofts,
here,
Pulte Lofts 2.
and allow me to share my screen. I have a brief presentation, and then we'd be happy to answer any questions. We were last before you in February of this year, and I will spare you the suspense and say the project itself is largely similar to what you saw previously. I'll go through a little bit of an overview here just to refresh everybody's memory. You should all have received our materials that we sent out to everyone and the updated questionnaire as well. And we also have the staff has published a staff report. We had the Planning Commission public hearing, and Commissioner Carter deferred a decision on the hearing so that we could meet with you all again and give you an update on the project. Just to refresh your memory, this is the location of the site, the northeast quadrant at the Wheelie Metro Station area. These are 3 parcels that are collectively about 5 acres. And this aerial shows the development that's occurring now. It's a little bit of a dated picture. This shows the proposed development and the overall area with plans that are existing and also approved as well, to show how we're fitting into the character of the emerging neighborhood here in this section of the Wheelie Metro Station area. So you've seen this image before. The overall site layout and the configuration of the multifamily buildings and the 2/2 units is essentially the same. You already know that we've been at this project for quite a while in various different configurations, beginning in February of 2019, and then we filed the plan in February of 2020. We've had 8 different development concepts. We're still on number 8, so that's good. And we're finally able to coalesce around something that we can move forward with. Again, 3 parcels, 5 acres, 112 multifamily units, and 46 stacked townhouse units for a total of 158 dwelling units. The one thing that has changed is the comprehensive plan recommendations that apply to the site. So if we go back a bit in time, and you may remember we were talking about this project before the Reston master plan study was undertaken, and Supervisor Alcorn had initiated another look at the Reston comprehensive plan. And then there was a task force, of course, and the task force came up with a number of recommendations for the overhaul of the comp plan for Reston. And we participated in that study, and there was an endorsement of a residential option for the site. Not exactly the same, and I'll show you what was ultimately approved in the next slide. But we did have a Planning Commission public hearing and then a board public hearing on the comprehensive plan amendment, and the board adopted that comprehensive plan amendment on May 5th. That comprehensive plan amendment includes the bullet points that are on the screen. I won't read them all, but just to highlight a few, that it recommends a residential development option up to a 1.4 FAR, and to try to achieve that density to the maximum extent feasible, with improved circulation and access to surrounding residential areas, a network of urban parks and open spaces, and the number of important road improvements. We are making proffers for road commitments on 3 sides of the block of this site. So there's a lot of road work that's going on here. To show how we line up with the comprehensive plan recommendations, our proposed FAR with the project is a 1.39 that is inclusive of our 20 workforce dwelling units. We have 1.31 acres of open space, which is about 32% of the site area. We have 0.4 acres of publicly accessible urban parks. That is in excess of the 0.41 acres of urban parks under the county's urban park framework. As I mentioned, we're making road improvements on 3 sides of the property: Reston Station Boulevard, Sunset Hills Road, and Easterly Road. And I'll go through those in more detail in the next couple of slides. And then just to note that the proposed development has a lower peak hour vehicle trip generation than the previously recommended office under the comprehensive plan. The design of the buildings has remained the same. As you can see here, this is the architectural design for the multifamily building, the design for the stacked townhouse buildings. This is the Central Park. This area includes a multi-purpose lawn, a children's play area, and then some gathering and seating areas around as well. Previously, in earlier iterations of the design, we had more open space along Sunset Hills Road. There was a desire and suggestion by the county staff to move more of that in a more meaningful, consolidated way. So we moved that more to the center of the site so that we could consolidate that open space and have a nicer, better overall urban park space experience. We also have some more passive park spaces throughout the site. This one at the northwest corner of the property, this is more of a gathering area for residents. And then we have some additional areas throughout the site, including this promenade that runs north-south and connects Sunset Hills Road and Reston Station Boulevard. The image on the left, you're looking from the north to the south, and you're looking toward Reston Station Boulevard. And the image on the right, you are looking from the south along Reston Station Boulevard up to the north. So that's a connecting feature through the site. And then this is the corner park area. One of the things that we had changed over time is to include park space directly on Reston Station Boulevard, which was another recommendation from the county staff as well. So we have a nice urban park space fronting along Reston Station Boulevard. This area between the two buildings is both a screen wall and a mural. And we're picking up some of the theme of the site with the Morse code because the central road that currently comes in off of Sunset Hills Road is Samuel Morse Drive, as you may recall. And so we're sort of highlighting that theme here as well. And there's some additional thematic elements throughout the urban park spaces referencing the Morse code. And then in terms of the road improvements, so on Reston Station Boulevard, this is similar to what you've seen from us before. We will be completing a full street section for Reston Station Boulevard, which will include on the north side of the road a parking lane, the landscape amenity panel, street trees, the sidewalk, and none of that's in place right now. So along the entire southern frontage of this site, we will be completing the full width, the full scope of the streetscape along Reston Station Boulevard with the elements that are noted here on the screen. On Sunset Hills Road, we will be providing a significant area for right-of-way dedication per the county's request. We will also be constructing the sidewalk that will be within that right-of-way area, and you can see that outlined in red here. And then for Easterly Road, this was the major item in our application that took some time to figure out what really was the right solution. And without getting into too much detail, it became clear relatively quickly in getting down to the details and the discussions with the planning staff and county DOT as well, and with the engineering folks involved, that there really wasn't a good way to do an interim section of Easterly Road. The lanes don't line up well. There's site distance issues. Implementing a section just on our side that actually had pavement that came all the way out to Sunset Hills from Reston Station Boulevard would require a lot of work on the Bognet property adjacent to us. And so there, again, it became clear relatively quickly that an interim section didn't make a lot of sense. So pivoting from there, we needed to figure out in coordination with everyone what would make the most sense in two scenarios. Because as you probably already know, the Bognet property has filed a rezoning application. They're in the process as well. We're significantly ahead of them from a timing perspective, but they will ultimately, presumably, continue to move forward with their development project. And so we have two scenarios, and what we are going to do to contribute our share toward the ultimate implementation of Easterly Road, and that's on the next two slides. One scenario is where we are the developer of the two that is proceeding first. And so what can we do in that scenario? And then the second scenario, obviously, is if we were to go second and the Bognet property would develop first. So to give you the overview, if we are proceeding to development first, we have committed in our proffers that we will dedicate right-of-way for the full section of Easterly Road along our site. So if you can see my cursor, that's all along here, we'll dedicate right-of-way. We will maintain that right-of-way until it's accepted by VDOT ultimately. We will grade this area of the property to approximately the ultimate grade for the connection out to Sunset Hills Road. We will make a contribution for the pavement to be provided by presumably the Bognet folks in this area as well. And then we would build this, and this part's already built here. So this is the Loft 1 project to the plan north, but it's west. So we would be responsible for this, and then grading this and making a contribution so that when Bognet proceeds with its development, it could complete this section of the road using the funds that we would contribute to that effort. In the alternative scenario, where we would be proceeding with our development second, Bognet would presumably be asked by the county to dedicate right of way and to make a contribution. And if they did, then we are proffered per our updated proffer since the last time we met with you all, we would be committed to build the entirety of the road. So we would do this, which is already done, basically, do this, and then do the road on both sides, if you can see it. So if we go second, we would complete the section of Reston Station Boulevard, or sorry, Easterly Road from Reston Station Boulevard out to Sunset Hills Road. The idea being here essentially is that we would suggest to the county, and the county's in support of our approach, to have basically parallel proffer commitments for both applications. Whoever goes first dedicates right of way, makes a contribution, and agrees to cooperate with future VDOT acceptance. Whoever goes second completes the road and then is responsible for getting the road accepted by VDOT. So that's in a nutshell, that was a bunch of months of conversation, but I think we've gotten to a really good result for the way that we can actually implement this road going forward. And then just to finish out, I think you've seen these images before, but I like these images. They really show how the project is very much consistent with the character of the area around it in terms of the not only the residential use, but the building height, the types of residential units, the multifamily units, and the stacked townhouse units. And again, just fits in really nicely to kind of round out this corner of the metro station area. This is just a different view looking from the east towards the west. So Reston Station Boulevard here going toward Wheelie in that direction. Again, you can just see how this fits in very nicely with the overall character of the metro station area. Just to conclude, again, we have a staff recommendation of approval. We've had the Planning Commission public hearing. The Planning Commission decision is scheduled for June 3rd. And that's where we are in the process. And I am happy to answer any questions.
Committee members, questions? Lynn.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I'm driving, so I'm turning my camera off. But I have a question. I know when you all came before previously that there were attendees from Lofts 1 that had concerns, and I am curious as to where we are in addressing those concerns and making sure that we are considering the complaints as we build out this project.
Sure. So I can see on the screen that there are folks from Lofts 1 who are here, and I imagine that they would like to speak for themselves. But I will say that we have met with Adam and some of his neighbors. We also met with Lisa from the Union Towns townhouses on the south side of Reston Station Boulevard. Nice discussion with her. Adam was very kind to give us a list of things that he would like us to address. A number of those things are related to the completion of the Lofts 1 project, and there are things that we are still not yet released for. Pulte is not yet released from bond on the Loft 1 project. So we shared some updates with Adam. Adam can speak to those as well. But we shared some updates with Adam. He also had some suggestions for additional things he would like to see in our proffers, and we're working through that. And I think we can make some changes to our proffers based on that. But beyond that, I guess I'll defer to Adam and his neighbors to speak for themselves.
Lynn, do you have any other?
Sorry, no, that was, I just want to make sure that, we are being supportive to the current residents, and that was one of the primary questions that I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. David and Sue.
Yes, I just got a quick clarification. On most of your photos or drawings of the surface of the multi-family sections and the others, it appears that all of your all of your buildings are sort of a flat plane rather than recessed areas and recessed sections. Can you clarify that for me? Because there was one that really struck me as an odd. It was a park, and then you had two sides of a building, or a building, and then a corner of another building, and it looked odd being just a flat plane back there.
Sure. Yeah, it would not be a flat plane. I think that's part of the way that that it's rendered. But if let me share my screen and I will pull up the architectural. Oh, whoops, that's my email. Hang on, stop sharing that. Yeah, yeah, you guys are gonna get the good stuff. Hang on, let me find it. There we go. There we go. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, here we go. So can you all see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, so you see like each of these changes in color. These are like right here, this is like a step back going from the lighter to the darker. The lighter is comes out farther than the darker here. Same thing here. This element comes out far, like you can see the shadow a little bit here. So this shows it better than in some of the renderings. This is the actual elevation. And you can see that there's articulation of the building across the facade. And then the same is true for the stacked townhouse units as well.
Okay, I just wanted clarification. I thought it must have been a rendering problem, but I was hoping it was just a rendering problem.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely
Yeah.
right. Yeah, no, it's not going to be flat.
Okay, thank you. Oh, Susan.
Yes, I had the same question as Lynn. We're very interested in existing neighboring residents' concerns. And so I know usually we wait until the end for this, but I see Adam there ready, and I'm wondering if we could hear from him because it might help us not repeat or ask the same kinds of questions. I would like to hear from him.
Adam, would you like to go?
Sure, thanks. I just had one question for Brian that I failed to ask when he and I met with John Carter a couple weeks ago or last week, whatever it was. Is this project or development going to be joining the Reston Association?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is a plan to join the Reston Association.
So I did, like Brian mentioned, I did send him and John and Supervisor Alcorn a list of concerns that we wanted to see addressed through the proffers. And just to mention to everyone who may not know me, I am on the board of directors for Lofts One. I'm not sure if the board committee members have a copy of the current proffers that are being proposed by Pulte for this project. But if you don't, that's okay. I can go through the concerns that we had. We talked about loading along the private street and saying that they were going to limit tenant move-in and move-out activities to times that are outside of the weekday peak travel periods and outside of scheduled trash pickup. To me, that seems unenforceable. I don't know how you would even enforce that, and it's kind of vague what those weekday peak travel periods are, but that was one of the suggestions we had to Pulte to change that. Landscaping plan. Really the big concern we have is the east side of our building was going to be pretty close to one of these proposed buildings, and current plans only have 2 trees to separate us and the new building, and we are requesting more trees to serve as a privacy screen between the 2 buildings. Easterly Road, the section that currently exists that was built by Pulte for our development, the original plan was for it to be a private road. Now the plan is for that road to be eventually accepted by VDOT. So we are concerned that the pavement probably is not built, strong enough to support what VDOT's looking for. And I'm sure there might be some other issues that VDOT wants to see changed with the road. So we're just requesting that it be put in the proffers that we're not responsible for any changes to Easterly Road that might need to happen, the current section that is, to be accepted by VDOT. Also, there's a retaining wall that blocks our view, and John Carter knows as well because I've shown it to him. When we're coming out of our development on Easterly and turning left to go east on Reston Station Boulevard, there's a retaining wall that blocks our line of sight. We can't see the traffic coming from our left at all. And we're requesting that one of the first construction activities be that wall be removed so that we can have line of sight there. Let's see, construction management plan. We're requesting that construction trucks do not use Easterly Road and use Samuel Morse Drive instead to avoid disrupting our community. It mentioned periodic updates. We felt that was too vague. We'd like to see monthly updates, which we think is a reasonable time frame. We also requesting the proffers, and this we learned the hard way from previous development near us, like Faraday Park, Union Townhomes, EYA Townhomes. We want something in there about Pulte have to pick up the trash from their employees, because inevitably, unfortunately, that, you know, people are, for the reason, do not pick up after themselves and litter, and we had to constantly pick up trash. Barry Steinberg, who's in my building, he knows very well. He was the trash picker-upper from the last construction projects that were around our community. Maintenance, I know it mentions maintenance. We've had issues with Pulte not removing the snow from our community in a timely manner. I think it should be written more specifically in the proffers, not just maintenance, but snow removal. And I think it should state that the snow removal will happen within 24 hours after the end of a snow event, to make sure that Pulte is, because, you know, after that storm in January, after 5 days of Pulte not being there, I called them to come plow, and I shouldn't have to call them. They know they're responsible. So we want to make sure that's more specific in the proffers. And then I'm almost done, sorry. And some things that are not in the proffers that we want to see as well. We want to see some mention of controlling dust and ongoing cleaning of the road. Because inevitably, obviously, there's going to be dust. And I know when Reston Row was built, they were constantly having water trucks, you know, driving around, cleaning the road from with all the dust and everything, debris, nails, you know, inevitably end up on the road. We want to get a flat tire. We're also requesting, which I think is a reasonable request, you know, leave it the way you found it. That we Pulte power washes upon completion of their project, that they power wash our balconies, our windows, and our building. Because again, we lived through this with previous development around us, and our building and windows and balconies got coated with dust. I had to hire someone to come power wash my balcony because it's just, like I said, it looked like I went through a dust storm or something. So those are our requests from Lofts One. We're waiting for an answer from Pulte. We did provide this document to them last week, and hopefully, you know, we can work together on addressing these concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. I appreciate your perceptions and experience because you've lived through it. Lynn, do you still have your hand up, or is that? I think that's probably in air. Mike Jennings.
It's an old
Yeah,
hand.
just
Sorry, Tam.
yeah, just a very simple question. Is this presentation tonight just for information, or are we voting? What the agenda was silent on that.
We certainly would be appreciative of your vote, given that the Planning Commission decision is scheduled for June 3rd.
Okay.
And by the way, if you all would like, I can walk through some of the things that we can add to the proffers based on what Adam voted.
Okay, there's nothing in my instructions that has anything about a vote. I thought this was strictly informative. So I'm sort of at a loss here. Anybody else from the committee? Yes.
Sorry, it's Lynn. I hate to pipe up without raising my hand again, but I am not prepared to vote on this tonight. I think that there are too many unanswered questions regarding Pulte's good neighbor policy, and I really want to see more before I give this an affirmative vote.
Thank you, Lynn. Any other committee members have questions? Michelle?
Brian just said that he would address some of Adam's concerns. Can we hear what you were going to say, Brian?
Sure. So a couple of things. I'll be very straightforward about what I think we can do and some things that we probably cannot do. So in terms of things that we can do, the snow removal, we can add that to the proffers. We have a construction management proffer already. Adam has noted things that he would like to be more detailed, tightened up, so to speak. So all of those things in the construction management, in the comments that he gave to us are all fine. I don't think we would be in a position to commit to power washing. However, the idea of having the truck with the water that keeps control of the dust, we can do that. So we'll add that to the proffers. There's no expectation or intent that the Lofts One Association would be responsible for VDOT acceptance ultimately for Easterly Road. So that's not part of the plan. And however we need to memorialize that, we're happy to do that. That was never the intent. In terms of the loading on the private street, the first point, Adam, that you made, that was requested by the county, actually. I don't, we'd have to talk to the county staff about whether they would be okay with us changing those conditions. I get what you're saying. There's a reason the staff wants those conditions to be that way. You feel that it's not really workable from the HOA's perspective. I get that. I get that difference of opinion. Just for what it's worth, the staff asked us for that, for those types of limitations. So we'll have to ask them. In terms of the potential to plant additional trees on Easterly Road, we can take a look at that. We haven't had a chance to do that since the public hearing. So we can do that, but I don't have an answer for you on that one just yet. And then the last one, I think, if I was jotting down my notes well, was the retaining wall and the line of sight and having that be an early part of the construction phase. So of course, at the completion of the project, that condition will be addressed and that condition will no longer exist. I think it's really tricky and hard for us to commit to that being the first part of the construction. So I don't know that that's something that we can do. But I guess to summarize, we can ask staff about the loading on the private street and those conditions. We can commit to the construction management. We can commit to the snow removal. We can do the truck with the water that controls dust. We can certainly clean up after ourselves. And so those are the things that we can do. And we're not expecting or seeking to make you guys responsible for VDOT acceptance of the road in any way.
I think Brian, did Adam also bring up the trees? Maybe was that on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can I add to the
Sure.
tree?
Yeah, go
And
ahead.
hi, this is Jessica Brusher with Land Design Consultants. Adam, I appreciate your concern about the trees. We are only including 2 trees because we're following the specific guidelines for streetscapes, and they outline exactly the location of the trees, but more specifically, they are specifications as to soil volumes, tree spacing. They give specific dimensions of the opening and of the soil. So we can only fit 2 trees there. However, saying that, we do have in our landscape plan a bioretention planter behind those trees that is going to be landscaping. It will create a second layer of landscaping for the Lofts One to view towards that side. But I don't believe we can add more trees to what I just mentioned before. We wouldn't meet the minimum soil volumes and it wouldn't meet the spacing requirements and the dimensions of the planting area.
Thank you.
Tammy, I have more.
Yes.
If that's okay.
Yeah, please leave your hand up until you're done because it's hard to, yeah. Okay, go ahead, Michelle.
Okay, so just looking at some of what was covered previously, has the bike lane been striped? I think, Adam, that was something you had asked for last time. Has that been taken care of?
No, I know I'm not quite sure what's happening with that. I know the pavement striping plan was submitted by Rooney on behalf of all three developers, but I'm not sure why it still hasn't been striped, because Rooney and EYA has striped their sections of Reston Station Boulevard. And so basically you have a bike lane on one segment,
I can
then no
speak to
bike
that,
lane.
Adam.
Yeah,
Can I
Don, do you
finish
want to
talking,
jump
please,
in?
Donald? Let me finish talking, please. You have a bike lane striped on Rooney's section, then no bike lane on Pulte section, then a bike lane striped on EYA section. And to me, it doesn't make sense to have a bike lane that's not continuous.
Yeah.
So Don can jump in a little bit more detail, but just to address that one specifically, the striping plan has been resubmitted. One of the things that caused delay in the striping plan was the fact that while the plat for the right-of-way dedication for Lofts 1 was processing, the county decided, as that was about to be approved, that they wanted to add the Michael Faraday section to that as well. So then they had to go back and redo the plat and go through that process again. Now that that's done, the restriping plan has been submitted and it's working its way through the process. So there was delay there, but the restriping plan has now been resubmitted.
Okay. Also, I think there was a request for temporary parking for loading and unloading. Is that addressed, and has that been addressed since that was requested?
So the request for the temporary loading and unloading is in the striped area that is on Easterly Road right now. And the county is, I mean, frankly, the county's not going to let us call that a loading and unloading area if people happen to use it. That, I doubt the county's going to come out and say otherwise. But that's not something that we can put on a plan.
Okay, so it doesn't really address delivery and rideshare vehicles, right?
Well,
Other
there's
than they would. Mhm.
there are parking spaces, right? And the striped out loading area internal to the Lofts 1 site has now been striped out. But I know that solution is not the solution that Adam and the Lofts 1 residents would prefer. That's what's based on the approved plans. We can't stripe out the section on Easterly Road. And ultimately, when that is turned over to VDOT, after Easterly Road is completed, that striping is going to be under VDOT's control anyway. For what it's worth, we learned from that, and we have a different loading solution for the Lofts 2 project, which is not the same. We have different loading spaces for the new site.
Do you have available the letters from FCPS on the expected number of elementary, middle, and high school students?
I do. I have what we received, and I can go through that real quick. For 25-26 school year, when we got this memo from FCPS, it was South Lakes 99%, Hughes 95%, Sunrise Valley 84% capacity. And then projected for 2030, 2031, South Lakes was at 101%, Hughes 94%, and Sunrise Valley 98%.
And how many additional students would this redevelopment application bring? It's usually in that letter too.
Yeah, I have a screen snip. We have that. We'll get that for you in a minute.
Okay. And then I would also be interested just to hear if any other neighbors had additional concerns. I mean, it seems like the parking's a major issue, and I don't know that it's going to get much better. And then I think there were also issues just with the safety of the crossing of Reston Station Boulevard and Wheelie. And I think you had told them, right, that it'll happen, but is there any further updates on increasing the safety?
So yeah, so that so a couple things, and I know I expect that folks want to chime in about that as well. There is definitely an issue for sure with the fact that there is a patchwork of sidewalk connections because development has not yet occurred on all of the blocks between where this site is located and Wheelie Avenue, and then across down Reston Station Boulevard to Wheelie, and then across to the metro station. There are also issues without that the Reston Station Boulevard, Wheelie Avenue, as I'm sure you guys know already, intersection itself doesn't have crosswalks at both legs going across Wheelie. There's been a lot of discussion about that. Much of that is related to the midline project. Some of it's related to the Comstock project on the west side of Wheelie. The midline project is proffered to do one of those crosswalks, but it's only proffered to do that when those buildings develop. And so because those buildings haven't developed, that crosswalk's not there yet. That's really the heart of the issue, which, candidly is the issue up and down Reston Station Boulevard, where there are missing sections of sidewalk. Because if the development is the one providing the sidewalk in the streetscape, if the development hasn't happened yet, then the sidewalk's not there. It's not a great condition. I totally get that. I'm not here to tell you it's a great condition, but at least that's the reason for it.
And just to kind of piggyback on that a little, I do also want to add, this is Mehagan Easley with Pulte. I know there are some kind of site distance issues or concerns coming from Lofts One, and so we actually did buy a convex mirror to install on an adjacent property to try to assist with that, and unfortunately we weren't able to get approval from that property to do that. So we have been trying to work with Adam to kind of help resolve some of these interim issues.
Brian, I know you're not here representing Comstock, but do you have any idea on when Comstock is going to move forward with those now abandoned and boarded up buildings along Wheelie? Because I think that's also contributing to some issues in this area.
So my understanding is that Comstock is no longer going to be the developer for those buildings, and they are back to JBG.
That is correct. I was in a meeting today about that, actually. So yes.
So, and I have not yet talked to JBG in detail about what their plans are for those buildings, and whether they're going to develop them, seek to develop something else and come back through the approval process. I just, frankly, I don't know, but I only heard very recently that Comstock was no longer going to be the developer for those buildings.
Does that include? Sorry, go ahead, Adam. No, you go ahead.
I interrupt, but I have an answer for you because I was in a meeting today with JBG Smith and I asked that exact question.
Okay.
And their answer, unfortunately, is they're trying to assess at this point what they want to do with those parcels since they just recently took them back from Comstock. So unfortunately, it's to be determined, which is too bad because one of those buildings that was going to be built was supposed to have a fresh market. And so all that is put on hold now until they can figure out what they want to do with the. And Brian's right about the, missing links, and that's not Pulte's fault, obviously, because they don't own those parcels. But I think this is a good example of, in my opinion, of planning that could have been done better by Fairfax County. And frankly, in my opinion, what they should have done is build that entire sidewalk on Reston Station Boulevard, and then when the different parcels get developed, they bill the developer whatever cost their section would have been for that. That's my opinion on that. But
so Brian, well, Adam, I agree. It would be great to get some more sidewalks and to have it done in a way where the people who are living there now could actually use them and benefit from them. And it's an absolute shame on how it's done. Brian, not having a grocery store is a pretty big deal. I know you guys this is an expedited process for you guys. And it seems like a lot of what we were thinking with this area, was to a certain extent contingent on the fact that it could actually be walkable. And without being able to walk to get groceries and other things, great that you're near a metro, but it doesn't actually serve you day to day. Again, it seems like you guys want to push this through as quickly as possible, but I don't know how long it's been out there that JBG is taking this over, but that seems pretty big if we're not going to have a community that's ready to handle all the people there. So I'm deeply concerned, and this is upsetting.
Well, so I would say two things. I wouldn't, at least from my perspective, I wouldn't call being in this process for 7 years expedited. So we've been at this on this site for quite a long time. So I'll just note that. But also I think the reality, and look, I don't like it either. Like I worked on the midline application. I'm excited about what could ultimately be developed there. I think EYA has done a very nice job with their development. That was part of that project. Is it unfortunate that between Comstock and JBG, that there isn't a way to make those other blocks happen? Yeah, of course. Like that is not the optimal condition, right? And I was excited to work on that project. I'm still excited to see what it ultimately becomes. It's still baked into the approvals in terms of what's on the plan until they ask to change the plan, which would obviously come back before you all and the planning commission and the county staff and the board and so on. But and I don't I don't mean this in a negative way, just as like it's the unfortunate reality. I think what you're seeing is there aren't that many multifamily buildings that developers can afford to build right now. That's the fundamental problem, right? The block on the EYA, the one building on the EYA blocks that's not developed is the multifamily building. The Comstock doing the deal with JBG and then not doing the deal with JBG, those were for multifamily buildings. They're like between, and look, again, like I'm not here to say it's a great scenario, but the reality of, inflation, cost increases, construction costs, labor cost, like there's a lot going on, and the end result of that is it's very hard to build a multifamily building in Fairfax County right now. That's just the reality.
I think we can understand the reality, but when you're talking about significantly increasing density and claiming that it's going to be, use transportation area, but then we can't actually do it. I mean, it may be the reality, but we also have to address the fact, then is the density warranted?
Well, I think 112 units to further support retail, because ideally that grocery store that comes in someday will have people who will support it. And the more people you have, the more likely you're going to be able to get somebody who's confident that that grocery store will work.
Okay, let's move along. Do you have anything else, Michelle?
No, I do not. No.
Good conversation, but we can't hold Brian feet to the fire on things he can't control. Thank you. You can say thank you, Brian.
Thank you. I know, I do. I appreciate it. Look, I'm excited for what the area ultimately will become. I don't want to sound like I'm the naysayer. It's just that's where we are right now.
Yes.
And
right. Thank you for sharing the multifamily building no-go finance right now. Next, Jared, you've put your hand down. Do you still have
No, I still have questions. Yeah, I just have a couple of quick questions.
Sure.
So, Brian, thanks for the presentation. The one question you may not be able to answer, but when the Easterly Road, when it does get built out, will there be parking on that street, do you think, or not? I'm just curious. I'm thinking about that one row of townhome units that's along there that front faces.
So what the plan ultimately, there's sort of two phases to this, I guess, because there's Easterly Road as it's built with Lofts 1 and then expanding it as part of Lofts 2. So south of that point where you hit the adjacent property line to the north, Easterly Road will end up being basically 3 lanes wide. And so how those lanes are utilized is kind of up to County DOT and VDOT. It's not going to be dictated by our plan or by the Lofts 1 plan. Honestly, if it's all dedicated right away, then county and VDOT are going to decide how to do that. The section going farther north, like completing it all the way to Sunset Hills Road, yes, we're keeping it consistent like on our side, and it depends what the county ultimately wants to do with the BogNet plan and whether they want it to continue to be essentially three lanes wide of pavement or 2 lanes wide of pavement. So that hasn't yet been determined.
Okay, I was just curious, thinking about access into those units and stuff like that for guests, things like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I figured that was maybe an unknown. The other thing is on the original Reston Planning and Zoning pre-application, under the sustainability goals, one thing that you listed was collaborate on additional opportunities such as, and you listed end green roofs. So as currently planned, do any of these buildings on this site, are they planned to have green roofs?
No, we are not planning any green roofs as part of this plan.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And I think that's a little disappointing, even looking at the massing that you have. It seems like it's an excellent opportunity for a lot of green roofs in this area. Okay. That's all I had, Lynn or Tammy. I wanted to confirm those.
Thank you so much, Jared. Okay, David and Sue.
Yes, I have two additional questions, Brian. Thank you for your presentation. Could you pull up the slide of sort of the bird's eye view or overhead of the entire project?
Sure. Hang on just a second. Sure, I'm sharing the right way. Here we go. All right. Can you see this?
Yes. At our last planning and zoning meeting on this project, I know that one of our members, who he is not here tonight, asked about the mass. They were concerned about the mass of the project, especially the building that's on Reston Station Road.
Do you mean this
looking at
building?
yes, and looking at the potential of reducing the mass of that to increase the open space and yes, to make it a better project. And then the other question that was not addressed, but has just been asked again, was about the green roof. I asked about the green roof. I think it's very important to include a green roof on this project. Imagine the people who are going to be living in the Marriott building and looking onto this property. Green roof is essential. I also brought up the possibility of recreational amenities on the roofs. This is just a missed opportunity for a design, a rooftop design that is attractive and functional. That's all.
David?
No, that's right.
Okay.
I agree with Sue wholeheartedly, but I don't have anything to add.
Okay, William.
Well, since we're on the topic of green roofs, why are the roofs colored black?
That is probably just the rendering.
Because it's extremely misleading, because typically what happens on a roof like this is that they are white. Because they need to be reflective if they're otherwise. Now, the other thing is that you should seriously consider a vegetated roof of some kind. Even the relatively most inexpensive one that's only 3 inches deep and has sedums on it, that actually has been shown to reduce the temperature at the top of the soil to be below the ambient air temperature on a day when it's 110 and the ambient air temperature is 72, the temperature at the top of the soil is 71. So one would wonder why you wouldn't want to seek such savings in terms of insulation or size of the units that have to address the top floor. You might want to consider that. You might want to also consider that, interestingly enough, a number of places are not just doing vegetated roofs, but they're doing urban agriculture on rooftops. Haley Rise is the first one, but they actually had to put theirs on the ground because they had already done the structure, which wouldn't hold it. But there are a number of places that are downtown in DC and also plan to be in the Reston Next version of development here, where they're going to put urban agriculture on the roofs. I had 3 of my projects historically change from a standard sedum roof to urban agriculture on the roof. End of my comments.
Thank you,
Thank
William.
you. Thank you, William. Appreciate you. Okay, other committee members? Okay, Adam, did you have one more comment?
Yeah, I appreciate Brian saying that some of the issues I brought up will hopefully be reflected in the proffers. Just going back to the one about the power washing, I don't know, I think, like I said, I mentioned earlier, leaving it the way you found it, I don't think that's an unreasonable request. And even if the proffers are written in a way that says only if, the balconies and windows and whatever do get coated with dust, that Pulte would clean it. If it didn't happen, then obviously we don't expect Pulte to clean it, but I don't think that's a big ask. I do think it's a little disappointing that Pulte seems unwilling. Somebody mentioned at the planning commission hearing as well, you guys seem unwilling to entertain that request. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I have a couple issues. And again, I'm not prepared to call for a vote on this because we were not informed that it was a vote. I have a couple of questions. Would you go to the slide on the playground, please?
Sure.
Okay, thank you so much. Question, how tall is this black iron fence? This looks like it's at least 6 feet tall. Is that correct?
No, I think it is just like a perspective issue, but I think and again, and maybe it is that we are not at that level of detail and that it was added as something that was taller than it needed to be. But I don't suppose it's any higher than maybe the shoulders, or definitely not 6 feet.
Okay, good, because it looks like a prison. Also, would you go to the slide that shows the mural between the, yes, thank you. That I hope is not exactly what the mural is going to look like.
It is not. It was an idea we have in our proffers that will coordinate with Public Art Reston. So if that's not the winning idea, that's okay.
Great. Thank you so much. Now I can sleep at night. That leads, it does not blend with the buildings. That's not Reston. I don't even know what that is, but thank you, Brian. You've made my day. Easterly Road, when it is done, if I follow correctly, if you can go to that slide where you showed how yes, that one. Where Easterly Road will continue from what it is now to the throat of the new lofts 2. If I'm understanding correctly, the front of the townhouses immediately east of Easterly Road in lofts 2, down past the throat that's finished, those will be very close to the roadway, correct? No, in lofts 2, not lofts 1. Oh, maybe that's.
Yeah, this is
okay.
lofts 2. Yeah, this
Thank
is the
you,
lofts
thank
2
you, thank
side.
you.
Yes, it's just it's
Okay.
tilted sideways. Sorry.
No, that's fine. I was looking at the colored one down below.
Yeah,
Okay.
same one. Yeah, these are the same. This is
Yes,
just
exactly.
yeah.
Okay. Is there a curb there? Hopefully a substantial curb?
So there will be when the road is completed. So there would be a
Yes.
curb here and the road section would be completed here. We're proposing to do this sidewalk and then to grade this so that it's approximately the final grade for the road. And
To go
then-
down to Sunset Hills.
Yes, correct.
Yes. Okay, that's terrific. I wanted to check with that. All righty. Anyone else have any other question? Oh, William, is your hand still up?
Not intentionally, sorry.
Okay, great. Barry, you're a resident of Lofts 1. Is that correct?
That is correct.
If you can have a very brief comment.
Well, I'll try. First, I think as Adam has already noted, Brian is taking the heat for crappy planning that gets us across Wheelie, which is not within the purview of Pulte, and he can't fix that. But then it appears that nobody else can either. Zoning can't fix it. Planning can't fix it. Transportation can't fix it. Everybody has kicked this thing down the road for at least 4 years that I know of. And I know that the problem has been there for at least 7 years. Now, enough is enough. It is time for the county at some point, some leadership to take charge of this issue. I don't want to hear about Comstock getting rid of it and J.B. Smith wouldn't build it. And therefore, we can't fix a pedestrian crosswalk across Wheelie Avenue because somebody's getting rid of the property and somebody else is going to take it. This is languished long enough. Now, enough of that bandstand. Brian, I do have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
The gradient that you look at from the existing level of Easterly to the level with above the retaining wall on the east side there, that's probably 5 or 6 feet. And then as you move towards Sunset, it's not a straight line right now. And the property drops off again significantly to get out to Sunset. That looks to me to be a major grading planning consideration. You indicate that you would not want to take that on early, but it will be a considerable undertaking. And I don't know how far back you're going to go to the east. If there's going to be a 3-lane road there, maybe just 2, but somebody's got to do a lot of grading to go in. Tell me what you plan to do in terms of the elevations just to get a road where you're not leaning 45 degrees when you drive on it, because that's what the property looks like right now.
Well, so just to be clear, the road section here, let me pull the plan up again. And Jessica can jump in with some of the, details on the grading, but this is, so if Pulte proceeds with their development before Bognet is ready to develop, then we would be doing this piece here that basically matches Easterly Road on the other side, right? And then this, we're going to grade out to the approximate grade that would be the ultimate grade, but we're not actually going to build a road over this portion. So if we go first, the road stops here basically. And then Bognet would finish the road.
Are you putting a retaining wall in after you grade it? Or are you are you going to grade the elevation down? Because it's a significant drop for putting a new road in.
Yeah, I get you. There would be a wall. Jessica, can you
Yeah, we
provide a little
provide
more color there?
Yeah, if you look at the plans, our plan set, the last sheet of our plan set provides a preliminary engineering, and as of now, based on that preliminary engineering and the grades, we don't need a retaining wall until you get closer to Sunset Hills, where that amenity area is on the screen.
You're talking
I think
right
you see,
here.
yeah, that is the retaining wall and that's the only retaining wall that we'll have. Other than that, we have been able to grade it all the way from Reston Station Boulevard to Sunset Hills.
Well, my only comment is that whatever you end up doing there, it's going to take significant grading regardless of who's doing it and when. But that dangerous traffic intersection at Easterly and Reston Station Boulevard, where you clearly have to get out into the lane in order to see to the left. It doesn't work. And, kicking that down the road, probably 2 years, 3 years, we've asked for one of those mirrored signs mirrors across the road so you can get some visibility. Right now, it is dangerous. I would point out to this commission that is an intersection on Reston Station Boulevard now traveled by school buses. It is not safe by any metric.
Thank you, Barry. I appreciate your comments. Okay, Brian, I think we're done. Thank you so much for coming.
Sure.
And next time you want a vote, be sure we know that. Michelle, did you have another comment?
Well,
Your hand is
Tammy,
up.
just for clarification, Brian said he's moving forward in a few days. So Brian, are you telling us if we don't vote now, you're not coming back?
If we have so the planning commission deferred a decision on the rezoning application to June 3rd. So the planning commission's expectation is that they will vote on June 3rd. We also have a board of supervisors hearing on June 23rd. Just to give you the dates.
So does the
could
committee feel like they're prepared to, I have so many notes on plan pages, for this, and I would not be as anxious, to be very frank, Brian, if Pulte had performed in a timely manner on Lofts 1. Given that Pulte's performance there seems to be not great, that's disturbing to me. Before we go any further, John Carter, I didn't even ask you. I'm so sorry. What is your?
I do have a couple comments. One, this isn't particularly appropriate, but I think Brian and Kelly has been kind of quiet there and have done a good job, I think, carrying the water on this. There is more to go on the proffers, but I think Brian and Kelly have been quite cooperative. Another thing, I would point to the Planning and Zoning Committee. I would point to the Planning Commission, and I would point to the supervisors in Lofts 1. There were several things done which we don't do anymore, but actually we do. This is this waiver issue. So one of the things that's Adam is talking about that we shouldn't do is waiving these things. The open space, Lofts 1 doesn't have any open space really. I don't know what happened exactly. It's a different zone. Why it is, I don't know. It's a mystery. Loading docks were waived. Sidewalk widths and lawn panels, we seem to do a different thing on each project. This project is now the last one and trying to figure it out which one to follow. So we should all be mindful of that. So that concludes B and Z, the Planning Commission and the supervisors on this. We're going to get those proffer improvements that Adam talked about. I don't know if we'll use the words power washing, but we'll use something equivalent, and maybe that will work. I do have some news. So there will be, EYA is planning to start the apartment building that's on the north side, which has the sidewalk that's not completed. And they're going to start that before the end of the year. So we'll probably get that. There is money for that, and Adam knows this. There is money for the crosswalk across Wheelie. I don't know, springing that loose is difficult when you have a developer already assigned to it, but maybe somebody will step forward with that. So there is a little bit of news on some of those items. Let's see. I've got a suggestion on Easterly Road, which is a different selection. And so there won't be an answer, but maybe a consideration is to move that up in the process. And I think I'd rather have, it would be a good idea to have Pulte build it up front, I think, and have Bognet dedicate the land up front. There might be some grading easements that has to be done, plus the dollars that would build half the road, to have them do that up front so that Pulte could go ahead and build the whole thing in the first phase. I don't know if that's feasible, and I don't expect an answer tonight, but I would maybe Kelly and Brian could think about that, of actually moving that forward. That would require Bognet to catch up with you a little bit. I understand they might try to get there get to the Planning Commission by the end of the year. And if it takes you 8 months to a year to get your site plan, then maybe the two could work. But I would suggest we try to do that. And it's because of that grading issue that one of the speakers talked about. I think that grading is going to be an issue, and the townhouses are going to be compromised if it's not built up front. So maybe we could consider that. What else is on my list? Sunset Hills Road right away. You're dedicating more right away there, right?
Mm-hmm.
I smiled at David's comments about the drawings looking flat, and I think I commented this at the planning commission that those renderings are not doing you any favors. So the basic question would be, this new building is going to be very much like the existing building would be the answer in terms of how flat it is or not flat. So that is the case, right? The new buildings are almost exact replica of the existing.
Of lots one?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So that's really, although the renderings, it's hard to see that from the renderings with the black roofs and sort of and elevations as drawings themselves tend to be flat, but the building's not going to be flat. Let's see, what else do I have? Well, those profit improvements, we're going to get those. I think we're going to achieve all of those 100%, except for the words power washing. We might not use that, but cleaning the building or some other such words that would do the same thing would be where we're going. But as for the P&Z committee, you can start expecting things like this happening when projects along these long roads like Reston Station happen over time. We reserve the right to get smarter as we go, and there were mistakes along the way. It's not okay, but we'll just make sure we don't keep making the same ones. But to hear from current residents close by is going to be the new thing as we move forward with some of these projects, and as some projects move forward. So I want to thank Adam and the other people speaking, because we're getting a taste of what's important to people and what's important to be living in these kind of situations. So anyway, enough of that. My last comment might be about the jobs and housing mix. So this one's probably doing pretty well. If you heard the last comment, we're losing 3 smaller office buildings and gaining quite a few, but not a huge number of residential units. Balance is close here. So, okay, that's me.
Thank you. I don't want to overrule the committee if they want to vote on this. I did have discrepancies in the plans. Somewhere in the literature, I've found 5-story and 6-story buildings, and on the drawings, it's 4-story and 5-story. What is it? Which is it?
The difference, Tammy, is the 5 and 6 is counting the level of underground parking.
Okay, so
the first floor of each of these buildings is parking, except from Reston Station Boulevard, it's built into the so there's been a lot of talk about the grading. So on Reston Station Boulevard, fronting on the street, the first level is units. It's not a level of parking out of the ground. The parking's below grade.
Okay, so it's underground on the 4-story and above ground on the 5-story. Is that what you're saying?
It's, well, here, let me pull up the exhibit.
It's underground on Reston Station Boulevard. It's 4 stories on Reston Station and 5 on the back side. I'll call it.
Here, let me I'll pull this up, go right to the very beginning, and I will show you real quick. Okay, so here are the 3 buildings. Each of these buildings has parking on the below the residential units.
Correct.
One of the buildings, I'm going to get this wrong. One of the buildings is 5 stories above the parking for 6, and 2 of the buildings are 4 stories above the parking for 5 stories total.
Okay. but they're not leaping out of the ground 5 and 6 stories.
No, that's correct.
Okay.
That's right.
Shoot. All right. And the other comment is, for God's sake, put some green roofs here. This is Reston. This is where climate is climbing. You know, totally astonished that that isn't automatically built in. It's such a savings in the people who live there forever. Might cost the developer a little bit more, but not much. Okay, does the committee want to vote on this? Can people on the committee put their hands up if they want to vote on this tonight?
Tammy, can I just make a quick comments, Mike?
Yes, Mike.
I just, as we think about this, I mean, if we want to have input on this, even though we're not prepared, we're not going to have any other time than right now.
Well, that's why I'm calling for this question.
Okay.
But it's fair to ask because we weren't expecting it. It's not on our agenda. It was in no information that I've received. And so hands up if you want to vote on this tonight. Anyone else besides Mike? 2. Okay. Sorry, guys, we don't have a majority wanting to vote. Thank you so much for coming, Brian.
Sure.
I'm sorry
Thank you
that
all.
there's a snafu in communications on that, but appreciate it. I did go through every page of your plan and, you know, good luck.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you, everybody. If you have any other, Tammy, if you have any other specifics, you know how to reach me, so I'm here. And thank you all for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, have a good night, everybody.
Good night. Okay. All right, we're down. Let's see, Lauren's leaving. We're down to the crew. Adam, you need to leave, please.
All right, sorry, I didn't know what the protocol is.
Yeah.
We're down to.
Okay. Committee. Any administrative business that anybody else wants to bring up? We had a conversation via email asking for members to be on the committee to select new members. We're set for that.
Real quick, should we stop recording at this point?
No,
Okay, just to check. Sorry.
thank you. And
If we don't, then it'll go on the YouTube page.
all right. Okay, so stop recording. Thank you, Mark. So we have a committee to select new members, and I think we need to do that sooner than